Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto trained Hanabi under the moonlight and built a hidden harem of Kunoichi, part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start a fanfic. I can't take no for an answer. You don't understand. I have to help her. Sorry. There's just nothing I can do. Medical ninjutsu tells me that this is a vegetative state and my clan techniques confirm that diagnosis. And her condition is getting worse. I don't think she'll survive the night. Ino, aren't you one of the best medics in the entire village? Do something. Shikamaru closed his eyes as a blonde black-clad boy wearing a white cloak depicting his sage status grabbed a sobbing Ino by the shoulders and shook her repeatedly. Normally, Shikamaru would have told his friend to calm down, but Shikamaru knew that this was Naruto's way of showing grief. Naruto. Ino yelled back, in tears. Sakura may be your girlfriend but she is my best friend. Don't you think I would do something if I could? Even if Lady Tsunade were still alive, she wouldn't be able to do anything to help. It's almost as impossible as bringing a dead person back to life. Gaara died. And he's still alive. There must be. Naruto, Shikamaru interjected. Naruto was beginning to spout nonsense. Shikamaru knew that it was time to get involved before Naruto started suggesting forbidden techniques. Many evil ninjas had started their walk down the path to darkness with the best of intentions. You know as well as I do that the technique Lady Chio used was a forbidden technique. Unless you're asking Ino to exchange her life for Sakura's, you might want to stop this. This isn't just hard on you, it's hard on all of us. You're hardly the only person in the village who cares about Sakura. But, the blonde sage retorted before falling silent. Shikamaru slowly nodded in approval as Naruto calmed down. Shikamaru had to admit that Naruto matured a great deal over the last 6 years. He figured it was the gauntlet of high-rank missions that Naruto was constantly sent on. Seeing people regularly die and seeing the bloody unwanted ramifications of words said in a heated fit of anger were the fastest, although not necessarily the easiest, way for a person to mature. Sorry, Ino, Naruto said in a low tone. I should have been more mature about this by now. After all of us know the risks of being a ninja. Ino gave the other blonde a hug. But your concern and compassionate for others makes you who you are. That's not a bad thing, Naruto. I'm just glad that Sakura has a caring boyfriend like you. Wham! The door swung open, revealing a breathless Kakashi and Shizune. I heard the news from Naruto's clone and I came as soon as I could. What happened? The masked ninja asked without preamble. More details. Shikamaru nodded at Naruto to signal for him to elaborate. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura and I got into an argument and she had just left my place. It had been around 30 minutes since she left when I heard her scream from a few blocks away. I rushed out and found her entire body covered with seals. I managed to disrupt the sealing from taking complete effect, but after that Sakura just fell down and didn't move. Naruto recounted. Shikamaru grimaced in trepidation. Naruto sounded rather calm, but there was hurt and anger just beneath the surface. Naruto clearly felt that he was partially to blame considering since he and Sakura had gotten into the argument that had Sakura running outside late at night. Shikamaru didn't know who the culprit was, but the culprit would not get to live for long once Naruto got his hands on him or her. And the prognosis? The 6th Hokage looked at Ino, the village's master on the mind. Ino shook her head. She might as well be dead, Lord Hokage. Her brain is a complete mess. I checked with both medical ninjutsu and my clan ninjutsu. Kakashi nodded. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to ask Shizune to take a quick look as well. It can't hurt to have another opinion. Kakashi signaled for the medic to run through some diagnostic tests. Sorry, guys, Naruto interrupted sadly, but I think I'm going to go back home since there's nothing I can do here. I'll be back in the morning. Kakashi nodded. I'll be here then to give you an update. Let's hope that she survives the night. Naruto didn't comment on that. Shikamaru watched as Naruto just slipped by them to leave the room with his head down. You're taking it better than I thought, Shikamaru commented to the Hokage after the door closed. Even if you're the Hokage and have to look at all of your subordinates equally, she's still your student. Well, it wouldn't be the first time I had someone close to me pass away before their time, Kakashi said grimly. I suppose you could say that I'm used to it by now. He looked towards the door. It's probably much harder on Naruto. Lord Hiruzen, Lord Jiraiya, Lady Tsunade, Chunin Yumino, and now Sakura. I'm worried that he's going to have no one he's close with in the village. There's you, Shikamaru pointed out with a frown. Don't sell yourself short. You know Naruto cares a lot about you. Perhaps, the Hokage allowed. Nonetheless, I'm still concerned about his state of mind. About that, Ino stood up and wiped away her tears. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes when her eyes went hard. Ino only got that look on the most dangerous of missions. Something about Naruto's story doesn't add up. What do you mean? Kakashi inquired. Are you saying he lied? Naruto has definitely matured in the last 6 years, but he's still very open and emotional when it comes to Sakura. I doubt he could hide his feelings. Since when did Naruto let Sakura walk back home by herself? Ino demanded. Even when they weren't dating, he always followed around her like a guard dog. It doesn't matter if they were fighting. He would have tried to apologize to her the entire way back. Shikamaru closed his eyes to think. That was true. Naruto hated it when others thought he needed support or protection and would lash out angrily. But Naruto himself always treated those around him like fragile pieces of art that needed to be handled with the utmost care. Despite Sakura being the strongest kunoichi in the village, Naruto made her protection as one of his top priorities. It was a poorly kept secret that Sakura acted annoyed but was secretly delighted with all the coddling. You're right, Shikamaru admitted. At the very least, he would have sent a clone along with Sakura. Even assuming Naruto genuinely forgot, what are the chances that Sakura would be attacked the one moment that Naruto took his eyes off of her? I am assuming that's why you lied to all of us about Sakura's mental state. Shizune looked up from Sakura. Sakura's perfectly fine as far as physical health. Mentally, she just appears as if she's asleep. Ino crossed her arms. When I used my mind-body dive technique on Sakura, I noticed that her consciousness was locked away with a seal. It was incredibly advanced fuinjutsu and covered extremely well with a genjutsu that made her appear as if she was brain dead. I don't know what exactly happened, but something seems wrong about this entire situation. Fuinjutsu. Naruto did mention seals earlier, Kakashi murmured. The sixth walked over to the pink-haired woman lying on the bed. Here, take me in with you. I'll try to see if I can break it. There was only silence for a few minutes as the two entered Sakura's mind. Nope, Kakashi said as he opened his eyes. There's nothing I can do. Whoever put this on her is definitely a master at the sealing arts. It's too risky to try and disrupt the seal. It might destroy her mind if we tamper with it carelessly. Are you saying Naruto placed this on her? Shizune asked incredulously as Ino opened her eyes as well. Naruto doesn't even know fuinjutsu. And we know that Naruto loves Sakura. He'd give his life for her. Ino shook her head. No, I know that Naruto cares. I also did a mind-body dive on him without him knowing earlier when he was still here. He has no memory of hurting her. Naruto was distracted with thoughts of ramen just after Sakura left and forgot to follow her. Only Naruto, Kakashi muttered. Shikamaru could tell that Kakashi wanted to slap his forehead. Shikamaru didn't blame him. Who the hell liked ramen of all things so much that it would be more important than protecting a loved one? Even Naruto normally didn't have that short of an attention span. Unless, Shikamaru's eyes widened before understanding what Ino meant. Someone had put a genjutsu that disguised the seal inside Sakura's mind. You're saying someone put a genjutsu on Naruto to keep him out of the way? He asked suddenly. His old teammate nodded at him. Considering that the genjutsu made it appear like Sakura was cognitively dead for all practical purposes, I think someone was hoping that we'd pull the plug on her ourselves. It would be an easy and untraceable way of killing someone. No blood and no outside damages. The genjutsu and fuinjutsu would disappear the moment she was killed, leaving no chakra traces as well. Since it was obvious that the attacker made contact with Naruto, I felt it best to fool Naruto in hopes of getting the attacker to think that the ploy was a success. Shikamaru nodded in approval at her quick thinking. To trick the enemy, you often had to trick your own allies as well. I see, Kakashi said. I suppose this helps in other ways too. Naruto would be here all day and night until Sakura woke up if he didn't think she was going to die. Shikamaru agreed. Naruto would adhere to his never give up nindo and stay next to Sakura as a show of support, refusing any missions that would take him away from her side for more than a few hours. But given Naruto's strategic importance out on the field, it was bad for Konoha. This entire thing is just too troublesome, he muttered. Why do I have to think about the ramifications of every single event that goes on in our damn village? Kakashi didn't have to tell Shikamaru that it was because he was the Anbu commander. Shikamaru had a duty to ensure the protection of the village at all costs. He was the knight on the chessboard, often placed strategically and hard to predict, but ultimately a sacrifice for the village. His complaints were minor in comparison to what would have to the children and the future generations of people if Konoha fell. Still, Shikamaru hated keeping things from his friends, especially someone like Naruto who would never understand why. Naruto still had not completely forgiven Kakashi and the now deceased former leaders for keeping information about his heritage hidden. Kakashi gave a bitter chuckle. I understand you more than anyone else. But we don't have that kind of luxury. All four of them in the room knew what the sixth was talking about. There was a long pause. Shikamaru met Shizune's look. She wasn't too happy with this either but looked willing to comply for now. He sighed in resignation. All right, I won't tell him. As of that moment, Sakura Haruno was officially dead. Hokage Monument, Konoha, January 2nd, Alaska 22. Love. What a foolish emotion. It makes us hope for the best and never be prepared for the worst, Naruto whispered as he stared out at the village. I really was an idiot for hoping that my love would cure all. In the end, people only care about themselves. In the end, no one truly loved him. They loved what they thought he was, protector of Konoha and someone who sacrificed everything for those precious to him. They didn't love who they thought he was, prankster and someone who jumped in before thinking about anything. And they didn't even know who he truly was. Underneath he snorted, they can't even see beneath one layer. He sighed as he looked up at the stars. No more. I don't think I want to love again. It just isn't worth it. He would die before he let himself be betrayed again. Hanabi Hyuga was a powerful ninja. Despite being only 17 years old, she was one of the powerful 25 or so Konoha ninjas classified as A-ranked or higher in the data books. She could count the number of Konoha Kunoichi stronger than her on one hand and still have fingers left over. Power was what continued to give her breathing room within her clan. It had saved her from getting sealed at a young age. It kept her father and the elders of the main house wary and respectful. Strength was what kept the danger away. She had always felt that the clan's ways and traditions were like a boa constrictor squeezing the life out of her. She would not live her life as a trapped bird or a cornered rat. She was strong. Despite her strength, however, she was not a natural genius like her late cousin. Her skills were earned through blood, sweat, and tears. It was this mindset that led Hanabi out of her clan compound and towards the normal training grounds. Once Neji had died in the war, Hanabi realized that her family's style of fighting was insufficient in the face of overwhelming power. Neji had been a genius of the gentle fist. There were even whispers that he was even more powerful than her father, especially since her father was out of practice. But even someone as skilled as Neji had perished in the war. The original gentle fist was a highly defensive style that forced the practitioner to move within a relatively small radius close to the ground. The midrange 8 trigrams vacuum palm, her sister's unique protection of the 8 trigrams 64 palms technique, and a larger Kaden radius somewhat extended the reach of the gentle fist user, but that did not change the fact that the gentle fist was highly limited. Hanabi initially tried to make simple modifications in the gentle fist techniques to make them less rigid and more fluid. Instead of using abrupt turns and sharp strikes, she flowed with her blows and used her agility to slide into her next move instead of pulling back. To allow her to fight even in the air, she added jumps and chakra-releasing kicks and jumps to give her more maneuverability. The last thing her enemies would see would be a captivating dance before their lives were cut short. Boom! She froze when she heard an explosion going off nearby in one of the training grounds. Her eyes narrowed and she turned her Byakugan on. No one trained at this time of the night, and especially not with loud and destructive ninjutsu. It probably was a fight. It took a few minutes and a couple more explosions before she arrived on training ground 7. She saw a blonde young man about to throw what looked like a chakra shuriken at one of the few trees remaining on that side of the training grounds. Given the appearance, it probably was the legendary wind release, Rasen Shuriken, the technique of the legendary toad sage Naruto Uzumaki, the clan head of the newest noble clan Uzumaki. Lord Uzumaki. Ah! The young man turned around and the ball of chakra dissipated. Hanabi saw markings disappear from his eyes. You're Hanabi, right? I was not aware that we were on first name basis, Lord Uzumaki, Hanabi answered in an irritated tone. She wasn't nearly the stickler for formality as her father was, but she still valued in maintaining outward respect for others. Well, I give you permission now. You can call me Naruto. And I'll call you Hanabi. It would be strange to call you Hyuga since I'm familiar with some others in your clan. Lord Uzumaki, she said coolly, ignoring his displeased look. If he wanted to annoy her, then she would annoy him by disregarding his wishes. What are you doing out at this time? The immediate response was a deadpan look. What do you think? The sage said, pointing to the craters in the training grounds. I'm practicing my ninjutsu. At this time, she inquired, slightly surprised. She hadn't thought a legend like Sage Naruto would even need to practice. I highly doubt that this is a part of your regular training routine. Ah, well, about that, Uzumaki's mood suddenly plummeted. I'm trying to distract myself. Distract yourself? Well, that, and let anyone who might be watching know that I have everything under control. She gave him a strange look. She wondered if it was an unspoken law that S-ranked ninjas had to have some kind of strange quirk. The sixth was an open pervert. And the teacher of her cousin's teammate Lee was rather unusual as well. How does destroyed half a training ground with ridiculously dangerous ninjutsu at midnight convince anyone that you're in the right state of mind? Well, because I'm known to be rather brash and rowdy. One of my missions was successful, but ended up with a ton of collateral damage and took the lives of a few of civilians that I had been protecting. If I went back home and acted as if nothing were wrong, Kakashi-sensei would never leave me alone. I'm fine, and I understand that being a ninja is risky business, but they don't think I know that. By showing him the tantrum that he expects, I'll have to deal with fewer people trying to fuss over me. That made sense. Sort of. Although, Hanabi wondered why Uzumaki didn't bother trying to change the opinions of those around him instead of just reinforcing the negative reputation he had. It was almost as if he wanted to be known as an immature child. Well, anyway, enough of me. So, little firecracker, what brings you out this late? Hanabi was jerked out of her thoughts. I'm not, firecracker. My name is Hanabi, Fireworks, she quipped immediately before realizing that the response just made her sound childish. She was tempted to glare as the sage laughed. Aren't you a cute little girl? But, you didn't answer my question. Well, Hanabi started out slowly. She didn't want to tell him about her training routine. She was trying to incorporate ninjutsu into her style to give it more range and versatility. The only problem was that her father and the elders would not be pleased. They strictly followed the Hyuga tradition of using purely the gentle fist to fight. Her modifications already were stretching the rules. So she decided to do her new training late at night and out in the training grounds instead of the clan compound so that no one would find out. So it would be bad if the news somehow got back to her clan. Aha, I know. You were doing something naughty. Uzumaki crowed in victory. Hanabi controlled herself as best as she could, but she felt her face flush red in anger and embarrassment at the insinuation. Still, it was best if he thought she was doing something perverted rather than find out about her training. So she would further mislead him. Lord Uzumaki, she growled out. How and where I spend my nights is none of your business. The blonde ignored her comment. Ah, Hanabi is being a rebellious little teen, he cooed. She was about to retort angrily when the sage became completely serious. Don't worry, you can tell me. My lips are sealed. What? She looked at him incredulously. Did he think that she was going to tell him details about her love life just because he wasn't going to tell anyone else? Admittedly, being the daughter of an intimidating clan head and a princess of the strongest noble clan in the village, she had no love life, but she wasn't going to say that to anyone. Uzumaki rolled his eyes. Look, it's crystal clear that you're doing some kind of forbidden training that you don't want your clan finding out about. Hanabi was floored. Did the man read her mind? How? Did the man know how to read minds? She had given no indications that she was training or that she was trying to avoid detection by her clan. The mood suddenly became light again. Oh, I get it. You thought I implied you were doing something perverted, huh? She wanted to growl in frustration but settled for repeating her previous question politely. How did you know? If someone as notoriously unobservant as Uzumaki was able to find her out, then she needed to figure out where she went wrong. Wearing training garb with training gear, chakra levels at nearly full capacity, wide awake, heading towards direction of training ground 41 before turning to come here. That couldn't be the case. Even if you were a censor, I wasn't even using chakra before I changed directions. Tell me the truth. How did you really know? Uzumaki grinned. Now that would be kissing and telling. In any case, like I said, my lips are sealed. I promise. And I never go back on my word. So don't feel too upset that you were caught. Uzumaki and his promises were famous throughout the village. There were rumors that because he used to house the greatest of the Biju, he was subject to the laws of demons. And there were plenty of old folklores saying that demons were unable to break their promises. Hanabi didn't really believe in any of those tales, but she knew that Uzumaki had never broken a single promise to date. Her secret was safe. It's not just that, Hanabi murmured softly, calming down with a few deep breaths. Oh, Uzumaki just raised an eyebrow. I'm also frustrated that I got caught. It just reminds me how far behind I am compared to a legend like you. The sage nodded. You're an elite in the ninja arts, one of the strongest in your clan's history. But you're trying to break out of the shell of an A- rank and move into the territory of the masters. In strength, you seek to remove the shackles placed on you by your clan. In power, you hope to find freedom. Hanabi didn't even react to the comment. She figured by now that the sage was somehow able to read her mind. She would have to settle for not outwardly embarrassing herself. She was skilled at maintaining her distance from others behind a wall of formality, but the toad sage managed to tear that wall down in less than 10 minutes. She briefly wondered if this was why Hinata still had the tendency to blush brightly and even occasionally faint in front of the man. The toad sage just had a way of getting reactions out of people. There are many days that I wish I hadn't been born as a Hyuga. My sister has found her purpose in trying to fix our clan. But for me, I feel that the clan is preventing me from discovering my own purpose. Father tells me that the clan is everything and the bonds of family should be placed above all else, but, she trailed off. You want to be acknowledged as your own person. Uzumaki said knowingly. I understand how that feels. At first, people saw the Kyuubi instead of me. Eventually, they acknowledged me, but they saw me as the one holding a Biju. They saw me as an instrument of war. My life has been defined by that. Even now, they fail to see me as me. They see the Toad Sage, the apprentice of the Lord Jiraiya, the Uzumaki clan head, the son of the Yellow Flash, and the golden son of Konoha who led the Grand Alliance to victory in the Fourth Shinobi World War. Hanabi noticed something change in those blue eyes. She couldn't determine exactly what it was, but it reminded her of the first time she saw him. Flashback. Hanabi, pay close attention to this battle. Neji possesses the thickest Hyuga blood. His eyes surpass those of your sister. Even more than big sisters. Hanabi asked. Yes, and mostly even yours, her father replied. As her father had commanded, she paid close attention to the battle. But her eyes were drawn towards the orange-clad boy. Byakugan, she whispered. She looked at his body movements, his eyes, and the atmosphere around him. Even after he was hit with the 8 trigrams 64 palms and had no chakra flowing through his chakra points, he never lost his confidence. She heard some people laugh at the boy's bravado, but she noticed something different. She couldn't figure out what was drawing her attention to the boy, but she knew that there was more to this boy than what most people saw. Father. She tugged at her father's sleeve. Who is that boy that Neji is fighting? His name is Naruto Uzumaki. Be wary around him. Hanabi could certainly agree with that. There was just something odd about Uzumaki, even beyond the strange red chakra he was using to defeat her cousin. End flashback. Hanabi reflected on that. Perhaps that's what she saw in him all those years ago. A kindred spirit not only searching but also struggling to find an identity. Well, she snapped her attention back to him. Yes, Uzumaki was giving her an expectant look, but she didn't know what he wanted. Don't you think this is a grand opportunity? Uzumaki said with a happy look. The setting is perfect, with the nice calm evening wind and the moon is bright. Some would say that something magical could happen tonight. For a second, Hanabi just stood there as she processed his words. Then, she felt chakra raging around her hands and feet menacingly before realizing just who she was about to assault and calming down. Lord Uzumaki, don't you think you have better things to do than to make passes at someone you have only met a handful of times? She tried to say the words in the most polite way she could, but couldn't hold back the annoyed tone in her voice. Uzumaki ignored her and fixed her with a stare before circling around her like a hawk. Not bad. Not bad at all. You look quite flexible too. Hanabi found her self-control beginning to crumble. She was respectful and polite, but there was only blatant flirting she could take without retaliating in some manner. She snapped when she found him completely ignoring her and ogling at certain private areas of her body. She was wearing the traditional Hyuga training robe, which didn't show much at all, but it was the principle of the matter. She struck at him with chakra-coated feet and palms and took a stance as he jumped a few meters away with a small smile. 8 trigrams vacuum palm, she screamed out, trying to blast the pervert away. Her eyes widened as she felt a change in the atmosphere and saw the sage backhand the invisible pulse of chakra and knock it to the side where it detonated on a tree. What a ridiculously fierce aura. This feeling. She suddenly discovered that her breath was ragged from the incredibly pressure around her. But that feeling disappeared as quickly as it came. The gentle fist techniques, the sage said in a serious tone, with the sole exception of the chakra-intensive Kaden, are most effective with direct contact. Aside from issues with lack of agility, which are resolved by a primarily defensive stance, there are nearly no flaws in the gentle fist, so a fight at close range with a gentle fist user is usually deadly. The only way to fight gentle fist user is to attack from distance since they have neither the range nor the mobility to reach beyond a certain distance. Even if the attacks themselves do not work, the gentle fist user will eventually tire. Hanabi stood there stunned at his sudden change in attitude and his skill. Not only was he completely right about the weaknesses of the gentle fist style, the sage had initially been less than half a meter away from her, well within the fighting range of a Hyuga, and he had still taken no damage. She stammered. Okay, The sage smiled. I'll train you for tonight. We'll magically transform you to a kick-ass kunoichi by the morning. He frowned and put his finger to his chin before adding, not that you aren't already, of course. Huh. She was so confused that she was reduced to using one-word responses. Uzumaki looked at her and sighed dramatically. You're out here to train, right? I just got a glance at your stance, which tells me a lot about how you fight, and one of your signature techniques. I've thoroughly examined your body so I know what types of movements you are capable of. I'm offering you a rare chance to be trained by the Toad Sage. Isn't that great? But, she stammered again, weren't you flirting with me? Weren't you making comments about my body and how you wanted to, sleep with me? He looked confused at that and then smiled innocently before pointing at himself. Who? Me? She nodded dumbly. Nope, he said after thinking for a few seconds. Can't recall doing so. I remember commenting on the weather, saying that it's great for some magical training, and then commenting on your stance and physical condition. Flashback. Aha, I know. You were doing something naughty. Uzumaki crowed in victory. Break. Don't you think this is a grand opportunity? Uzumaki said with a happy look. The setting is perfect with the nice calm evening wind and the moon is bright. Some would say that something magical could happen tonight. Break. Uzumaki ignored her and fixed her with a stare before circling around her like a hawk. Not bad. Not bad at all. You look quite flexible too. Break. The mood suddenly became light again. Oh, I get it. You thought I implied you were doing something perverted, huh? End flashback. Hanabi groaned out loud, not even caring that she was in front of someone else. You tricked me again. The sage laughed at her. I have no idea what you're talking about. I did no such thing. You just have a dirty mind, accusing me of flirting when I was just trying to help you out. I wasn't on expecting something like that, she pathetically said, ignoring his denial. Ninjas often spoke in double speak and triple speak, so it was obvious that the man wasn't going to admit to anything openly. She held her head down in shame. The sage had been testing her and she hadn't even come close to passing. Uzumaki put his finger on his chin to think. Now, I'm assuming that you're trying to build upon your gentle fist rather than starting over from scratch. Judging from your strikes, it seems as if you developed a gentle fist style that incorporates jumps and kicks instead of only the traditional palm strikes. No offense, but your range still sucks and your ranged attacks suck even more. Hanabi looked glumly at the area that had been completely blasted to bits by her technique and pointed. That pathetic, huh? Not pathetic. She had expected to see him taunting her or making another annoying comment, but he was giving her a serious look, but not well suited to your style. There was a strange confidence in his words. The sage was stating things as if they were simple facts. She was confused. Almost everything she heard about the young toad sage seemed to be wrong. From the older generation she learned that he was brash, loud, immature, and disrespectful. From the younger generation, including Hinata, she learned that while he was incredibly powerful, compassionate, and loyal, he was lacking in intelligence. But her own experiences told her something else altogether. He was deadly. She could feel the power in that aura of his just waiting to be unleashed. You know, she replied, nodding when he asked her if he could touch her, you're not at all what people say you are. That's so. Uzumaki laughed softly at that before walking to her and holding her arms in different fighting positions to see which of them would best suit her. She noted that he was taking extreme care not to be indecent. He was simply touching her as a master would his disciple than a man would a woman. Yeah, for some reason, the fact that he was so proper made her feel more self-conscious than if he were actually enjoying being that close to her and touching her. Why is my heart beating so quickly? Hanabi thought. I barely met him and he's having such a strange effect on me. Tell me, what chakra natures can you use? She found herself responding automatically without even thinking about the consequences of freely giving away information. The sage's charisma somehow had greatly affected her. My chakra leans towards wind, but I can also use water. I don't have too many techniques though. I just learned the bare minimum to become a Junin. Until recently, I focused almost exclusively on the gentle fist. The sage nodded before fixing her with an intense gaze. Wind and water, huh? He paused. What a coincidence. She kept staring at him with her white eyes as his blue eyes bore into her. There was so much emotion in that gaze of his, but, despite those emotions being in plain sight for her to read, she could not decipher any of them. He was definitely not what people said he was. He was the perfect example of what a shinobi should be. Powerful, intelligent, but most of all, deceptive. Kakashi-sensei, am I on your shit list or something? Kakashi found himself sighing in exasperation for what had to be the millionth time since becoming the sixth. He was irritated whenever Naruto was involved because he never found the time to read Ika Ika. The series had gone on even after Lord Jiraiya's death. The editors had been given the mountains of notes that Jiraiya had written and had more than enough notes to continue the stories. It was a good thing, too. Otherwise, Kakashi might have thrown himself off the Hokage monument in despair. Naruto. Language. Naruto merely rolled his eyes at Shizune. Shizune had continued to work as the Hokage's aide after having done the job for so long under Tsunade. Kakashi had been too lazy to find a new assistant and Shizune had wanted to remain as the Hokage's assistant to eventually help Naruto better when he became Hokage. That was the official excuse, at least. Kakashi smiled as he looked at the woman fondly. Neither of them would reveal the true reason. Kakashi turned his attention back to the situation at hand. Naruto was dramatically waving his hands in the air in an exaggerated attempt to be polite. I suppose this would be better then. Kakashi rolled his single visible eye at the sarcastic tone. His student was going to do something childish. Again. Sure enough, Naruto took a quick bow. My liege, your humble servant begs to be killed. It is better for this sinner to perish than to suffer the wrath of my lord. Kakashi sighed yet again while Shizune, the traitor, giggled. Naruto always had been difficult to handle because of his energy and stubbornness, but had been easy to manipulate in the past. Offering techniques or information about his parents went a long way in getting Naruto to behave. Lately, however, it was getting much harder to trick Naruto into falling in line. Perhaps the direct and honest approach was the best. Naruto, I am merely trying to do what is best for you and for the village. Contrary to what you might believe, I am not trying to hurt you. While Konoha's economic and military strength is at an all-time high, that's only in terms of numbers. The quality of our ninja is at its all-time low. During Lord Hashirama's time, we had over 50 A ranks and 7 S ranks. We only have half those numbers with only 25 A ranks and 3 S ranks even when we've been out of war for 6 years. Naruto crossed his arms. I understand. You're telling me that I should teach a bunch of brats because it would help me mature and that Konoha can benefit from having another team like the Sannin, especially after our team fell apart. I am the youngest ninja to reach S-ranked status since Itachi and you believe that I can impart that knowledge and drive to these kids. Kakashi almost let out a sigh of relief. Naruto was still loud and obnoxious at times, but he could be insightful and dedicated when he chose to be. Now all he needed to do was stamp the damn document and then find a secret closet where no one could find him so he could read his Ika Ika. Very good. I'm glad you owned. The answer's still no, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi suppressed an urge to bang his head on his table. This day just wouldn't end. Look, I know you think I'm being unreasonable, but try to look at things from my perspective. You had me running almost 40 consecutive S-ranked missions, most of them solo, over the last 2 years. That's more S-ranked missions than what some of our strongest elite Junin do in a lifetime. You still had me going on these missions even after my ex-girlfriend died. I never got to mourn properly. Then on top of that, you always make sure to do your best to time my missions so that I'm always in the village to suffer through that monthly hell called council meetings. And now you're telling me that you want to shove a bunch of brats onto me. Kakashi wanted to break something. Perhaps that was why Lady Tsunade always started and ended the day with some sort of property-damaging move. This job was just too annoying. People complained, people demanded, people never listened and never ever praised. Kakashi would cackle with glee the day Naruto took this damn job away from him. If it makes you feel any better, Lady Tsunade had me going on consecutive S-ranked missions after the Sand Sound invasion. That was when I was still teaching the three of you. So it's not like I've been asking you to do something I wouldn't. You, more than anyone else, understand that sacrifices need to be made. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The old man used to love saying that. Kakashi noted the glazed look in Blonde's eyes. It was clear that he was reminiscing about the old days. He was probably the most compassionate of all the Hokages, with a heart for the poor. It was true. The third was often unable to make hard choices or often made the wrong choices because he was too compassionate. Naruto's early life was the consequence of one such choice. But at the same time, that compassion for the poor was why Konoha was economically the healthiest of all the nations. Cleaning up the streets and educating and empowering the poor made for a more skilled and less violent population. Naruto, for the last 6+ years, I've had to allocate resources where they were needed the most. That's why I was held off from giving you students. You were needed for other critical missions. Our numbers were ridiculously low after the last war, and despite the era of peace that followed, there were lots of missions to be done. You were the only one who could complete these missions at the insanely fast pace that you set. And that bought us a ton of breathing room. Now, even in the wake of recent attacks on our border, we have the luxury of assigning you students and building up the future generation. I'm trying to give you a break here. Naruto glared at him. A break? Naruto asked incredulously. How is being responsible for 3 lives a break? At least on solo S ranks I don't have to worry about protecting other people. Kakashi groaned. He could just never win with Naruto no matter how he tried to phrase things. Once Naruto decided that something was a certain way, there was no convincing him otherwise. How about a compromise? I'll let you choose your own students. Don't care. Naruto folded his arms. It's like asking me to pick which poison I want to be fed. It's like me asking you which of your Ika books you're willing to let me burn. How about I teach the kids and I burn your Ika books? Kakashi twitched. It almost seemed like his student was being difficult on purpose. That, and the damn boy had the gall to threaten his precious. No one threatened Kami's gift to man and got away with it. Shizune jumped in at this point. Kakashi gave her a quick nod of thanks. He was 1 second away from driving a rakieri through the cheeky brat's chest. It might be best if someone else tried to talk reason into the boy. Kakashi watched as Shizune walked over and gave Naruto a hug. It was always like this with Naruto. He would play bad cop and then she would play good cop. Naruto usually was more agreeable when Shizune delivered the bad news. Naruto, is there anything we can do for you to do this? Shizune, shouldn't you be on my side? The masked bastard has been overworking me and now he wants to control my life. Kakashi-sensei, don't think I don't know what you're doing. You're worried because you think I don't have any more ties to the village. Most of the people close to me are dead or out of the village. So you're trying to use this opportunity to get me to make more bonds so you can be assured of my loyalty. Kakashi winced. Naruto didn't mince any words. It was true. Kakashi was worried that Naruto had no ties to the village anymore. But, at the same time, Kakashi didn't doubt Naruto's loyalty. Kakashi was trying to ease Naruto's loneliness by giving him students. Look, Kakashi said, I was like this as well after all my close friends died. I joined Anbu to isolate myself as much as possible. And remember that I didn't pass any team before yours. Well, it's because I didn't want to pass any teams. I know what you're going through and I'm trying to help. I do not doubt your loyalty at all. Kakashi looked mournfully at his student. I'm sad that you think so little of me. Naruto sighed. Okay, I'll do it. But I want something in return. I only want to take missions that I approve of. No more of these pointless political assassinations or preemptive strikes in the name of protecting Konoha. You're tired of making hard decisions, but Kakashi-sensei, I'm tired of executing your hard decisions out on the field. I'm really tired. Kakashi nodded. It was the least he could do. The casualty rates would skyrocket, but it seemed like Kakashi had pushed Naruto a bit too hard. Any more and they would lose him. That would be disastrous. Not just for Konoha, but for him as well. He had a responsibility to take care of his sensei's only son and his best friend's legacy. Within Naruto lived Obito's true feelings. Kakashi would do anything to ensure those feelings never died. Alright, we have a deal. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry for what I made you do over the years. Outskirts of the Land of Rice Fields, March 1st, Alaska 22. Renmara activated his eyes and set up illusions in case anyone was following. The illusions were only visual and would fade upon touch, but it would buy him some time. Time he needed to talk to his sensei. You are late, my minion, he heard as he approached the meeting ground. His sensei was dressed in a completely black cloak with a mask that only Renmara's eyes could see past. He panted. Not all of us can just pop up anywhere we want like you do, sensei. If you really cared about the time, you could have teleported to me and brought me here with you. It would have taken what, 2 seconds of your time. And damn it, he said angrily, I'm not your minion. His sensei tapped him on the forehead hard. Think of it as your training. Stealth training. Minion. Renmara glared at his teacher with his bright red eyes. To anyone else, his red glare might have been terrifying. But to someone like his teacher, it was probably only amusing. I hate you so much, sensei, he spat out. Speaking of which, I heard the name you gave yourself. What of it? Kabuto asked for a name and I provided one. But Taiyo no Kuroi Kokuden. That has to be the most ridiculous name I ever heard. Besides, it sounds like a play on Renmara. I did not come here to hear you crack jokes. I need your report now. You do not have much time to waste either. Alright, Renmara grumbled. His teacher was right after all. Renmara's illusions were good, but they were still just illusions. Someone would eventually discover that he was missing. Kabuto is getting bolder with the seals you provided him. How so? Is he altering them? No, it's nothing like that, Renmara replied. But he's challenging you. He directly defied your orders and placed the seals on warriors marked with the cursed seals of heaven and earth to increase his battle strength. He hasn't made any direct movements against the great villages, but he has intentionally used his spy network to trace missing ninjas and eliminate them for bounties. I believe he's hard-pressed for some money. It's not surprising. After all, he is paying us quite a large sum of money for the dispersion seals. Renmara frowned. His sensei didn't seem too worried that Kabuto was straying from the plan. Did his teacher expect this? Or was the money so important that his sensei was willing to compromise? Just what are you doing with all the money you're getting from Kabuto anyway? Foolish apprentice, did you think the weapon that you're carrying on your back was made free of cost? Renmara put his hand back to touch his staff. That weapon is the result of over 100 failures. I must remind you, apprentice, that even failures cost money. The amount I have left from my clan funds is impressive, but it is still not infinite. There was a slight pause. It would also appear strange to the banks if I kept burning through money at the rate that I do. Renmara lowered his head in shame at that. He hadn't known that his teacher had labored so much to produce the gift. Renmara had always had some difficulty molding chakra properly. He would become too fatigued too quickly and many of his techniques would dissipate midway. While he had excellent chakra control, it was almost as if he just didn't have enough chakra to do anything. His initial fighting style had involved using illusions and tricks with his ocular powers while his teacher sought out a viable solution to his problems. The solution had been his 15th birthday gift. The star staff was made of chakra metal and multicolored opal and embedded with a ruby, fire, sapphire, water, emerald, earth, yellow topaz, lightning, and diamond wind, each special self-sustaining seals that produced its respective chakra. His teacher had been the energy source for 3 while Renmara's own chakra somehow was the base for another 2. His teacher said something about how he was able to amplify Renmara's chakra to make the fusion work, but most of that went above Renmara's head. In any case, with that, the star staff, a staff that only allowed Renmara to wield it, had been made. The staff took no chakra to use and acted according to his will. Sorry for my impertinence, Sensei, Renmara said in an apologetic tone. It was difficult to stay too serious because his teacher wasn't even a decade older than he was and because his teacher didn't mind the jokes most of the time. So Renmara had to constantly remind himself that he owed his life to his teacher. Renmara had been working at the curry shop for several years when war broke out across the land. Renmara didn't have any marketable skills and was on the verge of starving when his sensei had found him almost 5 years ago. Renmara didn't show it too often, but he was truly grateful to have a dedicated mentor and direction in life. It's fine, the man replied. After all, you're not the only person I spend my money on. Little Yuna requires quite a lot of attention as well. That's true. Renmara laughed at that. Yuna was a little girl that his teacher found a few years ago. His teacher left her in the care of another one of his associates but visited her often. Renmara also visited whenever he could and from what he knew, the girl was a handful. In any case, that is irrelevant. Is there anything else? Ah, that reminds me. Were you the one who killed Sakura Haruno? How is that relevant to what Kabuto is doing? Renmara could hear a small growl. Renmara put up his hands defensively. Don't worry, I'm not trying to waste your time. Kabuto recently heard from his spies in Konoha that she was assassinated. I thought it might be you, but you don't like unnecessary bloodshed. There was a long pause. Essentially yes, although she isn't dead. The seal on her will eventually break and she will wake up. I just needed her out of the way. Konoha either killed her themselves once they found her a waste of space or covered her death up in an attempt to lure me out. Didn't the original plan involve her support? Didn't you want to draw her to our side because of her mastery in medical ninjutsu? I revealed myself to her and presented to her the option of joining us. But she seemed determined to stop my plans, so I had to remove her from the picture. But sensei, then who will take her spot? You know some medical ninjutsu, but you can't take the role of leader, fighter, spy, sealing master, and medic all at once. You're strong, but even you can't completely take over the world by yourself. Renmara didn't know the extent of his sensei's plans, but he did know that his teacher wanted to unify the elemental nations. We can't force someone unwilling to join us, his master said curtly. We will have to manage without her. I will begin training Yuna in medical ninjutsu instead. Yuna's chakra control rivals Sakura's and is beyond that of anyone else, so Yuna may end up taking that role in the future. In the meantime, keep spying on Kabuto while pretending to be a loyal Oto ninja for about another month. I shall call upon you once again fairly soon. Wait. Renmara looked at his teacher curiously. What about Kabuto? What about him? Renmara looked at his sensei disbelievingly. Are you just going to let Kabuto get away with disobeying your orders? He's attacking ninjas now. I will look to the side for now as long as he's not attacking civilians. And besides, he's only attacking missing ninjas who deserve to be killed anyway. It will be a good chance for us to see the results of the seals being tested in real combat against real ninjas. Do you have any reports on how effective they are on the field? Renmara frowned. Given that Kabuto has taken missing ninjas out without a single casualty, I think that those seals of yours are too effective. Aren't you worried that he might betray you? His sensei chuckled at that. Oh, he most certainly will. It is the reason those dispersion seals are so inefficient and have a time limit. He has a limited supply. I think he's found a way to create your seals for himself, sensei. It would explain why he has gotten so bold as to defy your orders on multiple fronts. Keep an eye out just in case, but it should be impossible to reverse engineer the dispersion seal without perfectly understanding the branch of Fuinjutsu I personally invented. For its ultimate purpose, it requires a special type of energy not known to most ninjas. I will admit, however, that it is possible for Kabuto to have found a way to extend the life of those seals so that he could use them over and over again. But don't let that bother you. I have a failsafe implanted in the formula in case he's found a way to reuse them. Mind sharing what that is? Renmara asked, after realizing that his sensei had purposely left that unclear. Why spoil the fun? Renmara shivered at the cold, deadly tone. It was one of those rare moments when he realized that his sensei was one of the deadliest fighters in the world. Palace Hall, Gello continent across the seas north of the Land of Wind, March 1, Alaska 22. It had been 6 years since Karen Uchiha had decided to forgive and then follow Sasuke. It had been the three of them, three former members of Team Hawk. Sasuke had wanted to find truth through exploration and reflection. She and Jugo were absolutely loyal to Sasuke if they followed him. Suigetsu, on the other hand, left them and had decided to rejoin Kiri. She thought back to the past. In end, Orochimaru had never given up his interest in finding the truth of the world through acquiring and experiencing as many techniques as possible and had eventually attacked Sasuke. From Sasuke's account, the mental battle had been even more pathetic than the time when Orochimaru made his first attempt. Sasuke once again absorbed Orochimaru and the power of the White Snake, but this time in less than a minute and this time permanently annihilating Orochimaru's spirit. That had been 5 years ago. After that, for a year, they had traveled throughout the elemental nations, saving villages from bandit attacks and searching for whatever it was that Sasuke was looking for. Sasuke even took up a couple part-time students along the way to impart some of his techniques, although he never let any of them follow. Karen wondered if Sasuke was trying to leave his mark on the world in some way in case he couldn't revive his clan. They now lived in an unnamed land across the seas from the elemental nations. Initially, there had been some opposition to them living in the strange land, but Sasuke personally had crushed any resistance with ease without even killing a single person. It was a show of power and a psychological attack to show that he was far above any of them. Sasuke was sending them a message that he could afford to leave them alive because they were of no concern. It was how Sasuke swiftly became the ruler of the new land. Since then, Sasuke only continued to train daily and become stronger. He trained with such manic obsession that Karen doubted even her distant cousin, Naruto, would be a match for Sasuke. In the elemental countries, the S ranks were heralded as near-invincible fighters. There were maybe 20 or so S-ranked ninjas in the elemental nations at any one time. Each could completely change the atmosphere on a battlefield. Karen snorted. In her opinion, none of them met the requirements of a true S rank. A true S rank is one who has S-ranked capabilities, meaning the ability to easily take down elites, across multiple disciplines. None of the known S ranks were true S ranks. Without his lightning armor, which gave him speed, defense, and power, the fourth Raikage was nothing. The sixth Hokage, from what she had heard, severely lacked the endurance to support his S-rank power. The fifth Hokage had only been feared for her physical strength and medical ninjutsu. The fifth Kazekage was also one-dimensional, using only sand as the basis of his fighting style. Even Naruto, the renowned, golden son, of Konoha, was nothing without his endurance and immense chakra reserves. Sasuke, however, was a master of ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, and weaponry all at the same time, even without his Sharingan. He even had branched into Fuinjutsu. He was the first true S rank since Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, with no true weaknesses. Karen, she heard Sasuke's voice call out. Yes, Sasuke. She turned to see her cloaked husband standing a few meters away from her, having just arrived using a space-time ninjutsu. She was annoyed that he kept using his space-time ninjutsu to ignore doors and walls, but she wasn't going to tell him not to. In this land, Sasuke was king and he ruled with an iron fist. While he cared little for formality or verbal respect, he did not accept disobedience. It is time, she gasped. But, isn't it too soon? So many projects haven't been completely yet. To start now would be reckless. Karen knew that Sasuke was itching to fight against the elemental nations, but this was madness. They didn't have enough firepower to take down the 5 great villages and the dozens of smaller villages. And that wasn't even counting the conventional forces and legions of samurais they would have to fight against. No, it might already be too late, Sasuke said in a low tone. I have just come back from the main continent and seen evidence that the countries are amassing power. Konoha especially is amassing power at a faster rate than we predicted. The low casualty rates they had in the last few years are almost unbelievable. Their quick rise may threaten all our plans. To ease your worries, for now, we will move slowly, using our influence from afar rather than using direct confrontation. Karen frowned. What power could threaten the power of the Gelul stone? The stone itself is powered by spirit of nature itself. It'll take time, but we'll even be able to perfect the fuinjutsu we created to prevent the usage of chakra within a certain radius. You know as well as I do that chakra is the lifeblood of any ninja. Even the Biju would be powerless facing this. Numbers meant nothing if they could perfect their seals. Their seals would render any ninja helpless. Sasuke shook his head. I'm not certain, but I can feel it in my blood. The Uchiha blood is born for battle and I felt it roar in anticipation while on the main continent. I know at least Naruto Uzumaki will not have sat around for over 6 years doing nothing. He will have found a way to fight even if we drain every bit of chakra from his body. I would never underestimate him. You always used to call him a blockhead, so why the fear now? Karen asked curiously. She knew that Naruto was strong, but Sasuke never had seemed to respect him. She suspected that it had something to do with their animosity during their genin days, but she was slightly taken aback by the open praise he was giving to his old teammate. Karen, she turned to see Jugo, who had just walked into the hall. This is something only someone who has had a rival would understand. The two of them are incredibly alike, working for the same goal but for different reasons and by using different approaches. Sasuke knows better than anyone that Naruto seeks power. Power. Sasuke repeated in a low tone. Jugo, you're wrong. We both seek justice. He continues to fight to protect the helpless, the poor, and those he loves. I, on the other hand, seek justice for those who have unjustly been killed and forgotten. For us, power is merely a means to an end. If there were a way to achieve what we seek without power, we would have done it. But this world only fears power. Karen nodded. Yeah, so that's why we've been trying to tap into the power of the Gelul stone for the past year or so. Sasuke inclined his head slightly in agreement. The power of the Gelul stone's strength lies in the fact that it takes away power from the enemy while leaving me with mine. It is about crushing the opposition with a force they cannot fathom. Why not just get stronger? Jugo interrupted. With more power, you'll just crush everyone in your way. Why specifically search out a way to limit other people's power? Sasuke shook his head. Eventually, a human will hit his limit. Ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu. I have hit the physical limits in all of the ninja arts. There is only so much chakra a human body can hold and only so much skill, speed, and strength a person can have. One solution is to seek a new type of power. The other is to take away the power of others to raise your relative power. We are doing both by using the Gelul stone. By stripping away chakra, we are removing the lifeblood of the ninjas who will oppose us while we ourselves are using a foreign power unknown to them. I see. That is why you're learning how to fight without chakra, Jugo muttered. And also why you're having us do the same. Another nod. It will take a fantastical amount of power to take on the world. The Gelel stone will be something that none of the great villages expect and will allow us to swiftly run through them. Wouldn't that be the case for Naruto Uzumaki as well? What makes him so special? I'm not sure, but I can feel my blood warning me that Naruto Uzumaki will be a threat to my plans. If he does get in the way, this time, Karen stepped back, startled at the sudden appearance of the red eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in her husband's eyes. I will crush him once and for all. For the sake of my justice. For the sake of my family, for the sake of the dead who cry out to me from the other side. Those were the 2 days when students in the different ninja academies graduated. They were 2 different tracks. In March, the students projected for heavy combat would graduate from the official academy, while in September, the students projected for support would graduate from the other various support schools and conservatories in the village. The support academy system was a good way to prevent unnecessary casualties among children and rookie ninjas who weren't suited for battle to begin with. Instead, they could be sent to the medical corps, research and development units, or administration departments. They would be given some combat training at home to slowly bring their skills to a low chunin level over a decade and would be used as reserves in emergencies. Many civilian parents understandably elected for their children to take this route. There was the prestige associated with being a ninja without many of the dire costs. On the other hand, official academy was filled with clan children who had family expectations to live up to and orphans who had no one to hold them back. Junin would come to see if they wanted to take on any of the new graduates. The ones who did gained a strong teacher. Contrary to popular belief among the clan children, the ones who failed weren't sent back to the academy but were sent to a basic training program along with the ones who failed the regular graduation exam. This basic training program had them become average chunin in about a decade. Occasionally, some of them would even become special junin, anbu, and junin, but for the most part, most ninjas who entered the basic training program ended up as mediocre. Not that that was a bad thing. After all, a large bulk of Konoha's 10,000-strong army was produced this way. Only the rare few were granted the honor of being trained under a junin and even fewer were granted apprenticeship. Konoha did not have the luxury to have most of its 100 or so junin babysitting children, even if it was a rite of passage for junin to be saddled with brats at least once in their careers. It just so happened that it was Naruto's turn this year. Naruto just twitched as he looked at the brats he was supposed to consider as potential students. The 10-year-old kids were fidgeting in excitement at the prospect of being taught by a legend. Naruto sighed. In his opinion, kids engaged in too much hero worship. He personally knew 2 of them from his visits to his old orphanage and felt a sense of kinship with them, but he wasn't too excited about having to be responsible for kids. Alright, we'll be doing introductions even though we all somewhat know one another. I'll begin, he said as the 3 excited 10-year-olds settled down. As you all know, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. He scratched his head. I really don't know what else to say, so you might as well introduce yourselves now. The brown-haired girl wearing pink and yellow and carrying a small cat decided to introduce herself. My name is Hikari Kamiya and this kitty here is Tailman. Naruto-sensei, I'm not sure if I ever introduced her to you when you visited. Tailman usually tries to hide whenever someone visits us. I found her on the streets 3 years ago and she's been my friend for a long time now. I'm not from a clan or anything, so I don't have any special skills of note. Oh, and I still have the hair clip you gave me. See, here it is. Naruto looked at the pink clip on her head as the cat meowed as if to introduce itself as well. Naruto smiled. He often visited the orphanage to donate goods and play with some of the younger children. It was sweet that the girl still kept his gift from a few years ago. He pointed to the blonde who was dressed in a yellow and turquoise outfit and wore a hat. The boy was carrying a large rodent with rather large ears on his lap. Next. Takaru Takaishi. I've known Hikari for my entire life because we were family friends. I visit her regularly at the orphanage. I live with my brother right now. This is my pet guinea pig that I received from my parents before they passed away. They said that he's a ninja guinea pig, but I never really see him do anything but eat and poo. His name is Patamon. The guinea pig squealed and flapped its impossibly large ears. Naruto briefly wondered if the rodent could fly with those strange ears. Considering that it was a ninja animal, it probably had some unusual ability. Naruto suddenly had a strange vision showing Patamon temporarily expanding and blowing out a burst of air as it screamed boom bubble. Pa! Naruto shook his head. That couldn't be right. His mind was playing strange tricks on him again. Maybe it was some sort of trend for children to have strange pets these days. The fact that Tailman and Patamon both had Mon at the end of their names was probably a fad as well. Kids, Naruto groaned. Well, at least the last one didn't have a pet. Naruto smiled as he turned to the last one. It was Daisuke. This one somewhat reminded his old self. Daisuke, why don't you introduce yourself? Naruto-sensei, you already know me and they know me from the academy. Naruto gave him an exasperated look. Okay. My name is Daisuke Motomiya. I'm going to become the Hokage one day. Naruto snorted. And then I'm going to marry Hikari. Naruto noticed that his other two students were rolling their eyes at the spiky-haired boy. This must have been a common occurrence at the academy. Sensei, what are we going to do today? Hikari asked in a polite tone. Are we going to start missions right away? Don't worry, Hikari. I'll protect you. Naruto smacked his forehead as the idiotic boy leaned over to hug his crush only to be scratched in the face by hissing Tailman. Ow, that hurts. Naruto got their attention by leaking some of his aura to subtly make them a bit nervous. You won't have a mission today. You still aren't official genin. What? Takaru asked in shock. Didn't we pass the exam? Naruto shook his head. That was just the test to see if you are worthy of being of the rare few to get a teacher. If you fail this test, you'll either have to go back to the academy to try again next year or go into basic training that most ninjas go through. You still can be ninjas, but you won't have someone watching over you and helping you along the way. I recommend that you try your best for this. Well, I'm going to do extremely well on this test. Daisuke yelled with a fist pump. As well as you did on the regular graduation exam, I'm sure, Naruto said sarcastically. Last place in nearly everything but taijutsu. Good luck impressing little Hikari with those scores. Everyone had a laugh at Daisuke's expense. So then what are we doing for this test? Naruto held up two bells. For this test, you'll have to get a bell by noon, which means you have an hour left. The test begins now. Naruto was impressed that the three of them immediately became serious and jumped away to hide. He had half expected Daisuke to stay and challenge him, but it appeared as if Daisuke was smarter than he himself was when he was a genin. Or maybe he's just not as starved for attention as I once was, Naruto thought darkly. Naruto just sat down and waited for them to come to him. After all, they would come to him to get the bell. After 15 or so minutes, Naruto jumped up quickly when he felt projectiles heading towards his direction. He pushed off the tree with his feet and ducked to avoid the windmill shuriken heading his way. Not bad, Naruto complimented as he saw another windmill shuriken underneath the first one. Deciding to go for overkill, instead of trying to jump in between the shuriken, he molded chakra in both of his hands as quickly as he could. Rasengan. Naruto blew both of the windmill shuriken to bits and swept his hand towards where the shuriken had come from. Instantly a huge gust of wind erupted from his hands and chased out the screaming Daisuke as trees and bushes were uprooted. Hey, don't you think that's a bit too much, Naruto-sensei? I'm only a kid. Naruto only laughed as he flashed through hand signs and created a rotating whip made of water that he was planning on showing Hanabi that evening. Water release. Hydro rotation. He kept chasing the boy with the whip, all the while cackling with glee. Maybe teaching wasn't so bad after all. I think I understand why Kakashi liked doing this so much. Naruto froze when he remembered a particular memory. Kakashi had shoved his fingers in there. Naruto shuddered. Naruto knew he could be particularly vicious with his pranks, but he wasn't going to violate his cute little students in that manner. He was not as cruel as Kakashi. He smirked as he returned to the matter at hand. He just missed Daisuke and slammed his water whip into a tree trunk, blowing it apart. Chasing students with an incredibly dangerous whip was nowhere near as screwed up as what Kakashi did. No one would blame him for being too excessive. Naruto suddenly felt a tingling in the back of his mind. Genjutsu. Instantly he snapped it, and parried the kick from Hikari. Leave him alone, she yelled. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Maybe the girl did like Daisuke after all. She seemed rather upset that Daisuke was reduced to cowering behind a large boulder. Naruto briefly saw an image of Sakura over Hikari before shaking his head. He shouldn't project his own genin team onto the team he was teaching. Daisuke was not him and Hikari was not Sakura. Already, Daisuke was showing much more skill than Naruto ever did, and Hikari, unlike Sakura, was showing teamwork with and concern for both of her teammates. Naruto grabbed Hikari's ankle as she tried another kick and cast a small genjutsu on her while holding her upside down in the air. Ninja arts. Partial darkness. He watched lazily as the girl screamed and writhed. Hey, stop hurting her. Naruto just held out a lazy hand and grabbed the kunai thrown towards him with only 2 fingers, much to the shock of his hat-wearing student. Oh, is it your turn now? Oh ho, I see how it is. You're in love with her. Naruto taunted. Takaru suddenly looked shocked and the hard look in his eyes faded. Ah, not you, too, sensei. Daisuke always keeps trying to fight me because he thinks Hikari and I like each other. Naruto didn't respond and threw the girl into Takaru's stomach, knocking them both back. Daisuke landed next to them worriedly. Is Hikari okay? Naruto watched bemused as the 2 boys tried to shake Hikari awake. His kids were fresh and raw, but they instinctively knew what was important in a fight. They hadn't even tried to fight alone from the very beginning. Daisuke had implicitly agreed to be the distraction for Hikari and Takaru. The fact that there were only 2 bells didn't even register in their minds. Despite the seemingly public displays of dysfunction, the 3 were close and knew one another well. Already, their teamwork was probably better than any other rookie genin team in history. I wonder if that's because all 3 of them are orphans. Orphans want attention and camaraderie more than anything. So what are you going to do? Naruto drawled. The girl you both are in love with is down and you have less than 5 minutes to get your bells. They both flushed at the mention of love. They looked at each and nodded. Daisuke stepped forward. I never really got the hang of this, but, he flashed through some hand signs Naruto was familiar with. Fire release. Fireball. Naruto was shocked that the boy knew an elemental technique already. Sasuke had been the only one of their generation to know an elemental technique. No matter what people said about him, Sasuke was still a genius, the kind that only shows up once every decade or so. Naruto braced himself but then started rolling on the ground in laughter when the fireball ended up being the size of a baseball and slower than a snail. Naruto grabbed his stomach and started kicking the air in laughter as the small fireball zigzagged through the air lazily towards him. What the hell was that, you idiot? Takaru demanded. How am I supposed to set off my traps with that as a distraction? Well, he's distracted right now. Daisuke argued. Naruto just kept on laughing as the small fireball passed over him and hit the tree next to him with a small poof. Naruto's danger senses suddenly warned him. TCH, he muttered before waving his hands and blew all the incoming projectiles away with a large gust of wind. Boom. Naruto looked towards his students. You could have blown up the bells that way, you know. He was amused when both of his students twitched at his statement. They had probably been expecting an indignant rebuke saying that explosive tags were dangerous. That had been dangerous. Well, not really, but Naruto wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of knowing that they had even triggered his 6th sense that warned him of danger. Ding. Well, that's time. Naruto held a hand up and released the genjutsu he placed on Hikari. Hikari. Takaru pulled the girl up and gave her a hug. Are you okay? Takaru. She asked, clearly dazed. What happened? There was so much darkness. I couldn't see anything. Hikari. We tried to protect you from that bastard of a teacher. He was the one who hurt you. Naruto rolled his eyes at the drama and stepped towards his students who were all on the ground. You failed to get a bell. So you all fail. Meow. Naruto turned to see a little white cat leap past him and land in Hikari's arms. Tailman. Hikari said as she rushed over and hugged the cat, you got them. I knew it was the right decision to send you to the marketplace. Naruto looked and in its mouth, there were 3 bells, exactly identical to the ones he had. Naruto's eyes widened. No way. I can't believe they solved the actual test. We pass, sensei. Hikari said victoriously. All you said was that we needed to get a bell. You never said we had to get it from you. Naruto dumbly nodded, still in shock. The surface test was a test of strength to see if the genin could get a bell. It was impossible and was supposed to alert the genin of a secondary test, a test of teamwork. It was a way to teach the genin that there is always something beneath what is shown to them. Underneath the underneath, however, was yet another test of thinking outside the box. It was true. Naruto never said they had to get a bell from him. But the test was designed to keep people focused only on what was directly in front of them. He himself was an example of this. People only saw his brash side pulling pranks and declaring that he would become Hokage. His closer friends saw his determination and loyalty under that. No one, however, saw his resentment towards the village and fatigue from serving a village that never truly accepted him. Everyone refused to see his insight, his intelligence, and his pain. His students had done in 1 hour what the rest of the village could not in 22 years. Naruto smiled. Despite his reluctance to teach, he was happy and proud of his students. They would eventually become amazing ninjas. Good job. You pass with flying colors. All 3 of you. Wait. Daisuke began. All that work, Takaru continued. All the fighting we did was for nothing. Daisuke said disbelievingly. Are you freaking kidding me? Well, I wanted to teach you multiple lessons here. First, you had to know that you couldn't get a bell from a Junin. That should have brought you together. If you can't overcome an obstacle, work together. The essence behind this test was not strength but teamwork. All of you pass on that mark. Hikari came to defend you, Daisuke, and well both you and Takaru worked together. All 3 of you worked together initially to set up that trap as well. Then even if Hikari didn't have Tailman bring the bells, you would have passed us? Takaru asked. Yes, he said simply. I was going to see what you would do after I gave you, but not Hikari, the bells. But it's annoyingly clear that both of you would have fought to give up your bell for little Hikari there. She's lucky to have 2 boys in love with her. Naruto smirked and pointed at the now blushing girl. But then, what was the point of Hikari getting the bells? Takaru asked. There's always a different way out. Remember that. As ninjas, we're taught to look beneath what is shown to us, but I want to teach you to look even deeper than that. When you're looking at situations or people, always make sure to keep searching deeper and deeper. Does that mean that we're supposed to assume that Daisuke isn't a lovesick idiot? Takaru asked with a smirk. Hey, take that back, Takaru. Daisuke shouted as he grabbed Takaru's collar. Naruto looked at them curiously. Takaru hadn't seemed like the type to start fights, but perhaps Naruto had read him wrong. Takaru seemed just as willing as Daisuke to stir up trouble. Naruto couldn't help but show a little smile. Yes, his students weren't a reincarnation of the old Team 7. Naruto just had to get over the ghosts of his past. Nah, Hikari piped up. That would make sense if he started to have a crush on me when we became ninjas, but he's liked me for years. He's a legitimate idiot. Ah, Hikari, Daisuke whined. That was mean. Sorry, Daisuke, but you couldn't save me even after promising to protect me, The girl crossed her arms and turned her head to the side. I would have given you a big reward if you did, too. She made a kissing motion with her face. She instead went over to Takaru and gave him a hug, which Takaru gladly returned. They all laughed as Daisuke rolled on the ground in emotional agony and moaned about lost chances. Hyuga Clan Compound, Konoha, March 1st, Alaska 22. Hinata stood at the end of the small pond owned by her family and looked at the reflection in the moon. She had been stressed for the last year or so and had found her new habit relaxing. It had started when Naruto eagerly accepted when Sakura asked him to be her boyfriend almost 2 years ago. That had hurt. Hinata had all but poured out her heart for Naruto before and during the last war, and still it wasn't enough to win the heart of the boy she adored. After the war, Naruto had politely refused, saying that while he cared for her, he simply did not know her well enough to return her love. Still, Hinata had hoped. She had hoped with time on her side that Naruto would eventually get to know her and return her love. A meal here and a talk there. She did all she could to make herself visible to him. It still hadn't been enough. Sakura regularly abused him and yet Naruto instantly agreed to commit himself to her. But Hinata, more so than anyone else, knew that Naruto truly loved the other girl. Naruto getting the girl he always dreamed about and chased after. Naruto finally breaking through to Sakura after his years of persistence and refusal to give up. The story, their relationship had felt so right. Sakura was bright, confident, and strong. Sakura was the very antithesis of who Hinata was. Thus, Hinata didn't begrudge Sakura for her relationship with Naruto. However, when she heard Sakura had died, Hinata had started to hope again. She felt guilty for being happy that one of her friends had passed away, but that guilt felt small in comparison for her desire to be with the one person she adored for her entire life. But there was still no progress on that end. Naruto was constantly on missions and somehow slipped away whenever she tried grabbing a hold of him. If she didn't know any better, she would say that he was purposely avoiding her. Then before Hinata knew it, it became March. She had been so engrossed with trying to get Naruto's attention that she had forgotten that Hanabi was turning 18 that month. Because the elders had deemed her weak and unfit for the position of clan head, Hinata was not the crown princess of the Hyuga clan when she reached adulthood more than 4 years ago. Now that Hanabi was turning 18, there would be a challenge match. The stronger of the two girls would be named the official heiress and the other would have the caged bird seal placed on her. It was lose-lose for Hinata. If she won, then Hanabi would be sealed. She didn't want her little sister to be sealed. But if Hinata lost, then she herself would be sealed. Hinata wasn't too close to Hanabi, but they were still sisters. How could the elders be so cruel so as to pit two sisters in what might as well be a battle to the death? She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't even sense the person who came behind her. Big sister. Hinata turned around. Hanabi, what are you doing out here? Her sister hesitated and looked uncomfortable. Hinata smiled. Ah, so that's what it was. Hanabi was sweet on a boy and had been looking to sneak out. I just needed some fresh air, Hanabi finally decided. Hinata's gentle smile remained. It appeared that Hanabi wasn't going to admit it. Hinata nodded before turning to look at the water and started throwing the petals off the flower she was holding into the water. There was a legend that if the petals floated towards the girl who tossed them into the water, the one she loved would come seeking for her. The petals didn't particularly float one way or another on most days, but that didn't stop Hinata from trying and hoping the petals would float towards her. I usually come here whenever I feel that way, Hinata responded. It was true. Whenever she did get stressed about Naruto, she did end up in front of the pond. I see, Hanabi murmured. Hinata knew that Hanabi understood the hidden meaning. Thinking about him again. Hinata gave no response for a minute but merely continued to lightly toss the petals into the pond. Not just about him, but yes, I was thinking about Naruto. Hanabi came to stand next to her. Can you tell me about him? Hinata instantly grew suspicious. Hanabi never talked about boys when she was growing up. Even when boys had showed interest in Hanabi, the girl had not mentioned it at all. This was the first time she showed any sort of interest in a male. Hinata didn't have proof that Hanabi was interested in Naruto, however. It could still just be an innocent question. She mentally sighed. She really needed to stop letting her feelings for Naruto getting in the way of everything else in her life. Kurenai-sensei kept warning Hinata not to be too obsessed, but it was just so difficult not to be fixated on the only person and thing that gave her life meaning. Naruto is the most compassionate and determined person in the world. He never backs down and continues to get back up whenever he's thrown down, always fighting for what he believes in and for those who are in need. A true hero. I see. Silence. Then, why do you ask? Hinata asked. Even Hinata had to wince at the accusatory tone in her own voice. Calm down, girl. It's Hanabi. She's refined and cultured. There is no way she would go after Naruto anyway. Don't worry, big sister. I'm not in love with him or anything. There was a slight pause. Even if I were in love with him, do you think he loves me? I can count the number of times I talked to him on one hand. I'm just curious because you love him so much. Everyone says he's unintelligent, perverted, and rude. Hinata nodded, finding herself strangely happy that Hanabi insulted Naruto. Hinata figured that it was because it meant Hanabi wasn't interested in Naruto, but Hinata felt a bit shamed at being happy at someone had put Naruto down nonetheless. Hanabi, someday you'll discover that intelligence or the appearance of respect aren't the most valuable things in this life. Naruto may be unintelligent, but he knows his purpose. Naruto may not be respectful to those with positions of power, but I have never once seen him abuse or mistreat anyone. Our own clan has never given a single ryo to an orphan and often scoffs at commoners. Naruto regularly donates at least half his wages to the needy and speaks with them in a respectful manner. The poor, I dare say, would say that Naruto is more respectful than the Hyuga clan. Our village is blessed to have someone so strong and kind like him. He sounds like a wonderful person, big sister. Hanabi paused before going on. I think I can understand why you like him so much. Hinata narrowed her eyes at that comment, but chose merely to nod her head. It wasn't healthy to be so paranoid that she would suspect her own sister of trying to steal the man she loves. Whenever Naruto speaks to me, I get a warm glow in my heart that makes my life so much brighter. Love is an amazing feeling, Hanabi, and I hope you'll get to experience it someday. There was just silence as Hinata watched the petals float away from her. Training Ground 7, Konoha, March 1st, Alaska 22. You're late, Hanabi heard as she arrived. My apologies, Lord Uzumaki, Hanabi said with her head low. She tried to find the right words, held up. I understand. The sage didn't seem to mind too much as he nodded in acceptance. Life gets in the way sometimes. What's important is how you play the cards that life deals to you. So shall we begin? Hanabi nodded eagerly. The previous night's training session had helped her tremendously. By some stroke of luck, Hanabi had the exact chakra alignment as the sage. He too used wind primarily and had water as a secondary nature, so he was able to help her far more than anyone else had in the past. And that was all in just one night. Unfortunately, as mentioned before, I'm not able to practice at home. But I did review the concepts in my head and practice without the use of elemental chakra, Hanabi replied. And I did go through the basic motions to incorporate this new technique in my fighting style. Great. Let's see it now. The style that they designed for her the previous night resolved the range issue. According to Uzumaki, the problem with ranged attacks was the high chakra cost. Because the opponent has the ability to see the attack coming, most ranged attacks would not hit and thus made them a waste of energy. The Hyuga's 8 trigram vacuum palm was required too much chakra and had nowhere near the speed that was required to make it viable option for a battle involving purely ranged attacks. Hanabi had felt lost at that point. It seemed that what Uzumaki was trying to do was make her both a close-range and long-range specialist at the same time. Was that even possible? Would she be able to switch back and forth between two styles? It was then that the sage smirked and told her to forget about trying to incorporate ranged attacks. She still was stunned by the sheer brilliance of his idea. The gentle fist was simply not a style suited for distance fighting, so the sage said that there was no point in trying to use it as such. Instead, supplementary ninjutsu would be used to bring the battle to a point where her gentle fist would work. Instead of chasing her enemies with attacks, she would bring her enemies near to her. This involved using water nature manipulation to create a tiny but durable whip that would cut through the air to grab her enemies and bring them into the range of her attacks. The water whip itself could be used as a ranged weapon as well in an emergency, even though it wasn't quite the deadly kind of weapon she would need in such a fight. Unless she specifically scheduled a training session in the training grounds, which she couldn't do too often given the thousands of ninjas wanting to use them during the day, she had to train on the clan grounds. And that would reveal that she was trying to use other styles than the gentle fist. So during the day she had practiced the motions using invisible chakra strings. Anyone using a Byakugan would have seen her whipping around a chakra thread, but at least there would be no visible damage to the grounds, and most Hyuga did not use the Byakugan in the clan compound unless training. And those who saw would just assuming that she was practicing chakra control. Now all she needed to do was to go through those same motions using water. Water release. Water whip, she intoned softly after going through the motions. She felt her chakra be converted to water and then take the shape of a long rope. She faced down Uzumaki and prepared to use the whip to grab him as he instructed her to. She swung her whip and commanded it to rush towards the sage only to have it completely broken apart by another water whip, if it could be called that. It looked more like a tiny rapidly rotating vortex of water in the general shape of a long rope. Water release. Hydro rotation, the sage remarked as she lost complete control over her own whip. That was a good first attempt, but you focused too much on creating the form of the whip itself. How it appears doesn't matter. If your whip gets destroyed, then you're just wasting chakra as you try to make it again. You need to create something that won't even get destroyed by a rock. Watch. Hanabi watched with her Byakugan as the sage swung the water rope at a nearby rock and smashed it to pieces. She noted that there were 5 different sets of streams of water that were spiraling throughout the rope at independent but all incredibly rapid rates. I see, Hanabi murmured. The velocity of the water was what gave its tangibility, not the water itself. I was too narrow-minded. Uzumaki nodded. As are many people. He changed the whip to be a stable rope simple filled with water and repeated the motion at a tree. The whip splashed in a small burst of water and disappeared upon impact. Chakra itself isn't your weapon, Hanabi. It's how you use chakra that counts. Now try it again. You don't have to use rotation to the extent that I did, but it's what will keep the rope from being destroyed the moment it touches something. Hanabi pondered for a minute or so, trying to figure out the ideal set of hand signs. I need it to grab and to hit, but I can't expend too much chakra on it to keep it constantly rotating at a high frequency. She added a few seals, so maybe only 1 set of rotation instead of 5. She created another whip that looked somewhat a cross between her first water whip and Uzumaki's whip and threw it towards the sage, who merely swatted at it. Instead of bursting the instant it hit, the whip wrapped his hand, before expanding and trapping his entire hand in an orb of water. The sage looked at his water-covered hand. Instead of using a tremendous amount of chakra to constantly keep the water rotating in multiple streams, you make it rotating in only one direction and compensate for the relative weakness by responding to changes in the water in real time. You're actually controlling every drop of water in your whip. So it doesn't matter if it bursts momentarily since it's all attached with your chakra, you can just reshape it immediately to trap the entire area. I'm impressed. You took advantage of the fact that you have amazing chakra control. What are you going to call it? Water release. Burst whip. He nodded. Okay. Now practice it with your gentle fist and I'll give you tips on how you could improve. I used to be a pure close-range fighter was as well and know some of the difficulties of trying to expand into mid-range and long-range. For the next half hour or so, she practiced grabbing different objects and bringing them closer to her as she rushed towards them for a gentle fist strike. She was rather satisfied with the results. She maintained the elegance of the gentle fist style by appearing like a ribbon dancer while increasing her reach to at least 20 meters away from her, a vast improvement of her original range of 4 or 5. Alright, Uzumaki said. Test it out on me. I'll let you catch me if I feel your attempts were sufficient enough. She nodded. Alright. Water release. Burst whip. She yelled in her mind as she converted her chakra into water and then saturated the newly formed water with her chakra. She noted glumly that Uzumaki was far too quick to be caught by her whip. She instantly created another one and started trying to fence him in. All I need is just one touch. If I can make contact with him. She felt the tug on her chakra signaling that she managed to hit him and then forced the water to expand and ensnare. Instantly, before he could apply his chakra to attach himself to a surface, she quickly tugged to launch him in the air toward her direction. She quickly released her water technique and raced towards him at top speed to strike him with her gentle fist. She jumped with her palm back and glowing with chakra. 3 more seconds until she would hit him. 2, 1. Water release. Wild water wave. She sputtered as a burst of water hit her and drenched her before finding herself sprawled on the ground in the sage's arms. Hey! She yelled indignantly, shoving her Hyuga stoicism to the side. What was that for? Uzumaki laughed at her as he looked up at her. He had somehow teleported himself to cushion her fall. I never said I would not attack. You can't just expect your enemy to let you hit them. Oh, want to hear a joke? He chortled. I put out the fire on the firecracker. Ha ha. She was not pleased. The joke was incredibly lame and she was not happy being wet. She sat up and raised her chakra-coated palm to strike him when she noted the rather compromising position that they were in. Also, with her clothes soaking wet, she was probably giving the sage a good idea of what she was hiding under her robes. The sage apparently had just noticed the same thing and had turned away while she blushed. He quickly but gently set her off of him and used a wind technique to dry the both of them off. Unfortunately, that had actually made the problem worse. Apparently, Uzumaki's jutsu for drying them off had a very short reach and they both had to endure being close together for about 5 minutes as they dried off. Anyone who might have seen them at that moment would have assumed that they were lovers embracing each other. There was an awkward silence. A very long awkward silence. He said, not meeting her gaze, I think it's best if we don't meet for some time. Still blushing, she nodded. Yes, Lord Uzumaki. I feel that would be for the best.